Greetings and salutations, gamers. Welcome to Cast Co-op, the podcast in which three podcast hosts cast together. I am one of your hosts, Luke Lore, the Insipid Ghost, and host of the Xbox Expansion Pass, joined by my big brother and yours, the most professional of podcasters out there, the man who leads the Bitcast, the handsome one, Mr. Ainsley Bowden.
Whoa. That was way too much for that intro, and none of it was even true. So I don't know where to begin with this, but good evening, everyone. Joe's looking really handsome tonight. I think you should just pass to him right away.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass to him right away. We're joined by the host of the Trophy Room, a PlayStation podcast, Mr. Joseph Moran, a.k.a. Mr. Badbit, looking quite dapper in his attire this evening. How are you, sir?
It's a tropical little shirt. You settle. All right, relax. I got, I got some sunshine, so the pigments start to glow again. I'm glistening, so I get it.
People are going to start to realize you're
I'm
Hispanic.
good looking.
They're going to start getting excited. I like this.
Honest to God, I get one of my coworkers are just like, Joe, you're Hispanic, right? I'm like, uh-huh. And she just goes, white people think you're Italian? I'm like, yeah. Like, it was instant. I've never been so happy in my life. I'm like, yes, this is who I am. Yeah, like, they guessed it, like, just not like first try. Very proud. But I would have been like, what if I was like, yeah, I am Italian. Italian, you know?
You know what? With that shirt and the beard growing out, and now a little bit of tan, you're starting to. You could play Max Payne in Max Payne 3. You're getting there. You've got that look to you.
I moved to Brazil because I maybe killed my wife. I forget how the story goes. I'm real depressed about it. Luke, can I say something nice about Luke for one sec?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we dog on Luke a lot, and I feel like it's affecting him. I feel like
It is.
If there's someone that's about to write a note that we should talk off a clip, it's probably Luke at this point. We've been dogging him a bit. And you know what? He has some good takes every now and again. So I'm not going to throw shade at Luke because I know he's been going through it with this whole, hearing in the congressional floor. He's getting nervous about. So I just,
there's hearings going on. He's not at work right now. It's not like he has to do anything during the day. So
friends are on trial.
It's very tough. It's very tough laying by the pool while we're working. Tough life.
Yeah. Y'all are dogging on me for being so pale and pasty. I was literally at the pool sunbathing, enjoying it. Can we just talk about The Boys season 3 dogging on Lindsey Graham?
I haven't gotten to that part yet, but I just turned it off to start the show.
So good.
Such a good season.
It's a quality season. What's a quality season?
They really the thing is with the first two, they were just like they hang on the deaths a lot. They're gruesome. But season 3, they're just like, we're not gonna. You guys know this by now. You're now normal with this because you're freaks like us. We're not gonna hang on it. It makes it even more visceral.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, they're not pulling any punches. It's good.
Yeah, one part got me a little bit, and I was like, ugh, didn't like that. But otherwise, The Boys is so great for 1,000 different reasons, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
You know what I love? I love video games, Luke.
I also love video games. We're going to talk about video games tonight, but I want to say hello to Mr. James Suddy in the chat, who very specifically said that Ainsley Bowden ignored him in the last episode. And Ains, can you just you and me?
Why is this? You're eventually you're actually going to make Suddy think that I have some sort of problem with him. I don't know if this is a long con.
You do. You were telling me about it just earlier. Yeah,
Suddy, they're conning you, man. They're conning you.
Would never.
I
would never.
Suddy, he has a spare kidney to give. He said.
Jesus. What's up, Graham? What's up,
Big don't think you'd want it.
Mr. Valdez and Captain Logan also in the chat. Good to see everybody.
Now Mo's pilot on me. What is going on around here?
Good on it, Mo. Good on it.
Pick on the old guy. Pick on the old guy.
Oh goodness, guys. We are a few weeks removed from our live episode of us reacting to the Xbox Bethesda showcase. After that, of course, we had the Capcom showcase. Square Enix gut punched every single Xbox fan in the nuts, twice over. For emphasis, Dragon's Dogma 2 was announced, and of course, we'd already had the Summer Game Fest. Guys, there was a lot of gaming news from the time that we recorded last to this one, and it's a lot, as some would say, to unpack.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. It's almost so much you don't really know where to begin because there's so many games and different things to touch on. By the way, Sarko's looking fresh with the tan, Joe. See, we're all seeing it, man. We're all seeing it.
This is normally how I look like when I step a foot outside. It's nuts.
I lay at the pool.
No, honestly,
he gets 3 minutes outside.
I want to stress two things. One, out of all the showcases, out of all the games, the first question that comes to mind is why did Callisto Protocol win Summer Game Fest?
Mm-hmm.
And then second, why are all Xbox, quote unquote, Xbots, would you? Whatever the slang
Actual
you
bots,
want to use.
Yes.
The fanboys.
Yeah.
I
Losing
don't
their
understand the obsession.
Well,
They're losing their goddamn mind. Yeah.
I agree with you. And let's hold that topic first, Joe. Let's go back to us as we reacted to the Xbox Bethesda showcase, because all three of us were rather lukewarm on the subject. And on our respective shows, we talked about how we came around in our own ways to really being quite pleased with the Bethesda showcase. Can you guys recap? Let's start with Ains on this one. Will you recap why you think you were maybe in the doldrums? Was it us? And then maybe like what kind of turned it around a little bit to up your liking of the show?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think everyone knows that trying to do a show with the two of you is rough to start with, right? So you try to push through.
Yeah.
You drink a lot prior, and you try to push things down. You know what I mean? It's a big ask. It's a big ask. So, I did my best in the situation. But no, in all seriousness, I think we talked about this extensively on Bigcast, and I think it's expectations. I think we kind of started to touch on it later in that show, is that last year we pretty much all agreed that the show was really good that Xbox did. And I think that last year's show was more typical of what we were used to in just our mindset of E3 showcases, meaning that it combined a ton of games and different footage with big trailers, reveals, and big IPs, right? Now, what it also did is it threw up teasers for games that are 3-4 years away. And Xbox has now decided to shift without telling people ahead of time. And I think that's where the expectations comes in, that this show was going to be everything that you can play, that they're targeting, of course, in the next 12 months. And when you're in the middle of the pandemic and a bunch of major delays and delayed development, to then say we're only going to show you things you can play in the next 12 months, obviously limits the scope of what you're going to show. And in doing so, they shifted what the show kind of was in comparisons to people's mindset for what an E3 showcase is like. And I think, despite the Starfield, despite the Redfall, despite the Forza, which, are their big games that we knew were coming and that we would see, and that generally I think showed really well, you had a lot of down periods. And it was in those down periods where the three of us were like, what is going on here? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I just think it was expectations. And as I came out of the show and reflected on it, and I started to think, okay, 99% of this is Game Pass. Everything's next 12 months. And then you start to take into context of the audience that Xbox is trying to reach, right? They're trying to broaden their global audience. We've talked about this a lot on this show. And different regions, and having a game for everyone, and being able to play games on your phone or any device and your Xbox and through the cloud. When you look at it holistically and you think they had 90 minutes, 15 of those minutes were basically Starfield. So in 75 minutes, they showed like 34 games that really kind of reached across all genres and all game types, and majority of which was gameplay. I think you have to step back and kind of applaud them and just say, that's a damn good show. And I think one point that Travis has made, just to end on this point, is that What Xbox needs to do now is stick to their guns. Don't move again based on feedback. Stick to the 12-month thing. Because what will happen is, as development catches up and all these studios that we know Xbox owns, or these big games that are in development, right? As that catches up, the next 12 months, every time they do a June show, will actually have probably at 3, 4, 5 blockbusters in it, along with a bunch of other games. But you have to stick to it now. This was going to be the rough one because you got to reset expectations and you got to deal with all the delays. But as things start to accelerate again, the show should get more akin to what we were used to seeing previously. That was a lot to unpack.
It was. Now, Joe, do you think that the sticking to the 12-month thing is a good idea?
Yes and no. So to me, the Xbox showcase still is, it was a good show. It wasn't a great show. It wasn't for me. And I feel like stepping out of it, I've been listening to more and more podcasts going, yeah, it was good, but just not for me. And it's going to be, I think, Xbox's new issue to kind of work on is like, okay, so you're going to have games like Sea of Thieves and like Fallout 76 now that are going to have these yearly patches. Do they absolutely need to be at the showcase? And if they do, for actually how long though? Right? Or could you have these, side events going, hey, this is a show to update on our, games and service games type of stuff, right? Or just have them have their own separate events. That's the one, I think, hurdle that as more games become games as service or live service games, or as more studios have these types of games, that they're going to have to kind of adjust how they set that messaging out forward. The other thing is, they spoke to a rather global audience. So, Europeans are going to probably be tuning out of a lot of the League of Legends stuff, because the League of Legends stuff is really, really big in like places like South Korea, where, it's maybe not as big here in North America or Europe. So like, there are things that they have to kind of adjust and have what Ains said, expectations set and readjusted. So for me, it was more like, we don't need to see any more Fallout 76. We don't really need, as much as I love Sea of Thieves, we don't need to see more Sea of Thieves. Those games can have their own not showcases, but their own little mini events, like a Nintendo Direct or like a, state of play almost, and maybe have it so that it's more concise, where it's focusing on what it needs to show you, which are the games that we haven't seen yet or want more information on that haven't come out yet, that unreleased stuff. That's what I feel like they need to do forward. I think, Ain/Travis is right here. It's a great readjustment. But at the same exact time, I do miss I wanted to see more Fable. There are games that are like the pie in the sky that they will have to actually showcase those games early, because they need people interested in the product to apply to those studios. So like, yeah, you still need those games that are far away. I don't think like the only a year out is actually realistic, but I do think will be a happy medium where they'll show something that is maybe a little bit far out, and most of the stuff is,
12 months. For a while, so I'm going to cut you off. Well, so 12 to... Go ahead, Ains. Go ahead.
No, I was going to kind of set you up, because I obviously want to hear your thoughts too. I mean, kind of. But I want to hear your thoughts too. But we did a special roundtable on this exact topic, and one of the things at Season Gaming, and one of the things we talked about, and I want to throw this at you guys to see what you think, is we kind of like the 12-month thing. Joe kind of touched on one of the things, which is, if you're going to do 12 months and you're going to have things like Sea of Thieves, Fallout 76, and these kind of live service ongoing games, right? Why not? You have this extended showcase, and the view on the extended showcase seemed to be pretty positive, right? So what we talked about was, why not condense your showcase, as Joe said, down to maybe 60 minutes instead of 90, right? Focus on 12 months, but focus on things we haven't seen before or new gameplay reveals, what have you, right? Do your extended showcase, which then includes all your live service updates, right? So your Sea of Thieves, your Fallout 76, your Halo, Gears, State of Decay, whatever the hell's coming down the road, right? And then throughout the year, instead of Xbox trying to save everything for this kind of E3 model that we've grown accustomed to over decades, right? Why not? Because you have so many studios and so many projects. I think at last check, someone told me Xbox has 57 projects in the works. That's a lot of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not do a monthly Xbox Live for like an hour or even 30 minutes where you just talk with a couple developers from one studio about one game and give insight to it throughout the year? And so you kind of keep your fans engaged at these projects that are ongoing, and it would give some insight to development. But when you're talking about the big showcase, right, that we wait for in June, it would be more focused. I'll stop talking now.
So I like one a month. I think is too often for it to be special, and so I don't know that one a month is the right number. But I do appreciate the idea of more frequent updates. The problem with those updates is that
like a behind the scenes on one game, though, one title. It would be just talking to devs, like, not like a showcase every month. One title, how it's going in development, a peek behind the curtain type thing.
let me
That's
postulate
too
on
much
that
money.
one. That it feels like it's a lot of work and effort for those involved. But I like the idea behind it. I want to push back a little bit on the idea that they were spending too much time on current projects. I didn't get that vibe at all. Sea of Thieves was gone in a flash. I don't even remember the Fallout 76 stuff. Where, because I jotted down everything we saw. Sea of Thieves was nestled in between Ravenlock and Diablo 4. But I felt like I got bored during when we saw things like Lightyear Frontier, Naraka, Pentiment. Pentiment's where I really was like, all right, I'm done. And
I remember when that came on the screen, we were like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, that is such a bad game to show at a showcase because it's made by this legendary creator, very high talent level coming from Obsidian. That's the game you need the deep dive on, and it needs to not happen in the middle of your high octane showcase. You know what I mean? Because that's slow.
I agree with you. I was going to say, I showed that trailer to my wife, who doesn't game. She's not a gamer, right? Generally, we play horror games together. She loved it. She's like, oh, this looks really cool. And I'm like, okay. But I completely agree with you, Luke, that that's not the game that's a showcase level game.
Right. And that was really where I came down. I like the idea of a 12 to 18 month showcase because 12 months is too short to keep investors happy. And PlayStation does something very well, which is having you look forward to the next thing. That to me is very, very exciting. Like knowing that there is something great coming down the line. I like that about PlayStation's marketing. And I was very pleased when I saw Xbox start to do that with things like Fable, Perfect Dark, Avowed, etc. With the caveat of saying like, all right, now I need updates here and there. And I think the pandemic really messed up a lot of their plans with that, right? The cadence of showcasing some of those projects because work from home hit when a lot of those things really got announced. So I think that's part of it. But I agree with the sentiment of putting live service stuff that does exist within their ecosystem into a showcase extended. I like the idea of more shows, but one a month, I'm not sure I could get behind. I can't get excited for one a month. When there's a State of Play or a Nintendo Direct, the communities around it get excited because they're fleeting and they're excited. They're new. They're like, oh, is there one? Is there one? And it's just announced and bam, it's happening. But I think the industry would tire of writing the article of here's another month where they showcase this and whatnot. And not for nothing, I come from a bit of a bias on this one, given the nature of XEP. But there are several shows like mine, as high profiled as IGN's Unfiltered, all the way down to indies like myself, where we do have developer interviews all the time. And that's not always what people want. And that's just the reality, right? Interviews and deep dives aren't always what people want. Sometimes they just want the games and the showcase to say, hey, that's what I'm excited for. Joe, you made a face when I noted that. What were you thinking?
Yeah, no, it comes down to like, yeah, the interviews are cute, but I do think what people do want to see are those deep dives on Starfield. Like, I would appreciate those dev interviews, but that takes so much time and that takes devs away from their work, and that's just a whole lot of production and editing that they have to do that I don't think is like conducive to actually paying dividends for the long haul. To me, it's having those quarterly updates. Nintendo does it, PlayStation sort of kind of does it. And I think that's where the sweet spot is. It's like, hey, here are some games that are coming out, in the soon to be future. Or here's like with the state of play. Here's like a third party showcase that we're having. Like, set expectations accordingly and just have little chunks where you can showcase indies better than a showcase can. So for me,
Right.
that's kind of where I fall on it. It's just really mainly on the production end that I just don't see the once a month thing actually feasible.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like this comment from Captain Logan, and I don't know that I agree or disagree, but I want to read it. I think the trouble here is that there's a AAA expectation, and from what I'm hearing, and Microsoft is showing games that appeal to more than just that. They're breaking down what's indie and what's AAA. And he does make a really good point there, in that Microsoft was showcasing games that were not just your bombastic AAA high octane trailer, but down to your kind of sub teams, your smaller teams, your smaller games, which you would probably classify as AA or indie within the scope of the game, right? Like I would classify Battletoads as an indie style game from a few years ago, in the mindset of what I mean. Am I translating well?
Yeah.
Do you guys?
Yeah. And I think it ties back to 12 months, right? And global audience. While the AAA games are obviously going to be the ones that many of us, like I said, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's expectation. We're used to these showcases being the AAA showcases. It's what we've grown up with our whole lives.
And let's be honest, I don't think neither of like the big showcases, like the Summer Game Fest or Xbox, I think Xbox a bit more, were like the huge, here's all the AAA games like that we know, that we realize our memories have of God, words are escaping me, of back in the day, right? Like, you're not getting your 2016 Year of Dreams PlayStation event like we used to. So, like, for example, like that Summer Games Fest, there's a lot of CGI. It was a lot of ideas and a lot of teases towards things, and I think the games that struck out to us more were where we actually got to see gameplay. That's why, to me, Callisto Protocol is the game of the show for all of it, because it showed you the concept of what this game is, and then they showed the execution of it, what this game's going to play like, and it didn't waste your time. Same with Redfall. Like, to me, Redfall is, they showed a little bit of gameplay, they showed a little bit of cinematic. Now what that game is going to be by looking at it. And I think that's what we're missing. And I think it's not that Xbox wants to readjust expectations for the next 12 months and that's the future of these. I think they're readjusting your expectations because, again, the pandemic has clearly affected game releases and schedules and teams, where they can't just break down vertical slices anymore and show them off. Because I guarantee you, if this wasn't happening at the moment, you would have seen the more bombastic stuff in not a Pentiment, which isn't a bad thing. That, like, these big companies, like, to me, Pentiment, though not a game for me, it shows that Xbox is willing to take a bet on one of their bigger studios, or that we perceive of bigger, by going, hey, go out there, do a little indie this shindig. Like this looks totally different and smaller in scope, and it's unique that we've never really seen before. I like when these big companies take chances on small weird games like Stray, or like we are like, what is it, OFC, right? Like these small little niche indie projects that will get berated by fanboys, but I think true people that like video games will maybe actually take a chance on it.
Yeah, and that's, it always feels like it's funny when we sit and do these post shows, right? Because it always feels like sometimes, I would hate to be in the position of organizing these shows because it feels like a no-win situation at times. When they come out and you talk about, some of the PlayStation conferences we always reference from your point, Joe, to kind of the mid 2015s or the mid decade there, where they came out and they would show like, 6 huge things or something, but then, nothing would release for 3 years. And it's like people get incredibly excited about that. But then others are saying, well, why are they showing me nothing I can play for 2 or 3 years? So then Xbox last year, pretty celebrated show, like I said. But think about what the commentary was in terms of negatives for that show. It was, we didn't see a lot of gameplay, too many trailers, and some of these games aren't coming out for years. So what do? They come back the following year. They say you'll be able to play all of these things. Most anyway, we know a few will get delayed, but you'll be able to play all these things next 12 months, and it's going to be more gameplay than we've ever shown. What do people say? Man, I wish there were bigger AAA things in some of their future projects in the show. It's like, Xbox is probably like, come on, guys, like, what are you doing here?
Well, I think if they were to watch a show like ours and watch us react, it's clear why we were disappointed at various points, but they did have a lot of AAA. I was more sold on Redfall than I'd ever been before, thanks to what we saw. Callisto Protocol and Summer Game Fest, I was in, and I wasn't in before, right? I'm not a huge horror game player. Ains, I think you and I are playing the same horror game right now to be talked about next week. But like, I'm not a big horror game person, but I was in on seeing gameplay of Callisto Protocol. I was in on Redfall, thanks to the gameplay that was showcased. And when people like ourselves watch those showcases, I think it could have done with a bit of editing, but they had a lot of great stuff, trimming down a few parts of it. And I would have been really pleased with a lot of elements of that show. And I've even come around on games like Diablo 4. Like, I'm cautious because Immortal is out there and ruining lives. But I am excited for Diablo 4. And I'm greatly appreciative of, I can't tell, you two are both talking to people off screen. Something wrong?
I'm not
We're
talking
to each other.
I'm actually just joking that how could you not be excited for Diablo 4? It's like,
so
awesome.
Oh no, I always liked it, never loved it, but I'm coming around on it. You know what I mean? I'm excited for it. And that's
I am happy that as a friend, every week you give me another bad take and that you are really fighting for Joe's crown. Like, I mean, you're competing at a level that
I just said I was coming around on it, and I like Diablo 3.
But it is funny though, like at the same exact time, I think this showcase is again very good because I am gonna play Diablo. I am gonna play Overwatch 2, right? Like Redfall looks great. I'm sorry, guys. I'm
Forza
probably going to. Yeah, Forza looks great. I'll play 40 minutes of that and go, ooh, wow, look at the pretty colors. And that's no disrespect. I just can't do any type of racing game. GT was the same. But like, even with Starfield, I'm not going to play that game. Just looking at it, you got to really convince me at this point.
Wow. You know, like, you're not a Bethesda RPG, guys?
So, Joe,
Skyrim was great. Fallout 4 was massively disappointing. And to me, that's too much game, and I don't like the used cars salesman pitch that God Howard gave. It's like, there's 1,000 planets, and don't worry, you'll know which ones are procedurally generated or not. It's like, don't like that. I wasn't a
Joe,
fan.
I think you'll change that tune because of Game Pass. I bet you try it. I bet you try it because the hype will be there. Everyone will be excited. I bet you.
I think that there's going to be a lot of commentary that's happening right now around Starfield that is going to be looked back on as hilarious in a few years.
I hope
too, because Cyberpunk burned us. Halo Infinite, people are saying that still. We had a good argument today, which we'll talk about later in the show.
It wasn't even an argument.
It was a discussion that we had in the show. It was an argument. It was an argument.
And it was fair, and it was a fair one. And I let you two have this impassioned thing, and I was just doing my job because that's what I was doing. I don't
I don't like when we say
let's save that for a minute.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I've got this comment sitting on the
screen. I want to get to Yaz up here. Go ahead. You read it.
No, a couple comments I want to get to actually that people are saying. So Yasin said this showcase was an 8.5, had gameplay, showed off exclusives, had huge announcements, and gave gamers what's to come in 12 months. And I think that's perfectly fair.
Agree with it. That's where I stand now, having reflected. That's exactly where I stand.
Me too. I don't know who this Xbox expansion pass guy is. It's weird. I don't even want to read it.
If I'm using my XEP budget to promote, indies carry the weight, man. And that was what Joe was saying at the time. And indies have stepped up as they always do. They always step up and take care of gamers. And that's just the coolest part. We're all playing Shredder's Revenge right now. Dope.
Amazing game.
Congrats to Tribute Games. So good.
Dash says, one extreme or another is not the way. How about 80% next 12 months and a few teases to look forward to? Boom, perfect conference.
I like that.
I like that as well. I have to imagine that's been done before and still face complaints. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel with that comment, right? Over 25 years of conferences.
Dash, I thought you made a great comment.
It's a great comment, and I agree. But I'm just saying, like, I think my point is, no matter what these companies, not just Xbox, but any of these companies do, and Keeley and everyone else, sure, there's conferences where we think are really great, but there's always complaints, one way or another. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Any other one you want me to pull up?
No, I don't think so. I do like the aspect of. No, okay. So I was thinking about the live aspect of it. Summer Game Fest was live. Xbox, I believe Xbox was pre-recorded. It looked like it was pre-recorded. Was it not? Either way, the reason I bring that up is I want them to be available. They have to find a way. The gaming industry has to find a way to deliver this content in a way that is going to be shown in 4K to as many places as possible, because we are now at the point where a compressed stream does a game a great disservice. It was very noticeable to me when I went back and looked at the 4K stream of Starfield versus the compressed thing that we watched, right? And that is has to be. Go ahead.
Sorry. I totally cut you off. Could we put Hassan's comment up there?
So I am actually responding, and I was making a point in chat about it. So so Joe, and I know you commented on this. So
I also have something to say on that. Go for it. Yeah. Let's do this one.
Okay. So I'm going to read it for audio listeners. So Hassan says, I honestly don't know why people have issues with Starfield's 1,000 plants. It says plants, Hassan. Planets. You have 5 or 6 handcrafted, and the rest for those who want to explore and do a bit more.
So I had a lot of beef with some people, like Tom Henderson put out the side-by-side comparison when IGN was like, there's a lot of people thinking
hilarious,
thinking that the No Man's Sky comparison to Starfield, they did like a side-by-side.
You mean a very good comparison that they curated a trailer that looked exactly like No Man's Sky, and they absolutely deserve that comparison.
It did for 8 seconds. You're right.
And Tom Henderson did one that was side by side. But the problem with Tom and a lot of people that have problems with that critique is we know what Forza is and we know what Trucking Simulator is. We have no idea what Starfield really is. We know 15 minutes of Starfield, right? Mm-hmm. So like, to me, when people are like those comparisons are lazy, no, that's what we're working with. Agreed. So like I'm sorry, as someone who has a very outside look on No Man's Sky, I've seen No Man's Sky, I've played No Man's Sky, and there are some similarities between the two. So the only thing that I can have is the 15 minutes that they showed me of Starfield, which were very similar things that I did in another game that I didn't like. That's a fair comparison. Until Starfield comes out and it shows me it's nothing like No Man's Sky, I was an idiot to think differently. That's what I'll think, because my mind is simple and we draw the comparisons, naturally. So to me, the reason why I have a problem with it is, simply put, the reason why Skyrim is so special is because all of those caves were handcrafted. They had a team of people making these caves, right? The reason why Elden Ring is so spectacular is everything is intricately designed. Right, that catacomb, like that honeycomb design that I always talk about on the trophy room, that makes From Software special. It's all just meticulously crafted. So when we just put everything to an engine and just go, hey, figure it out. And before, this engine couldn't figure out loading times when you entered into a room in Fallout 4. It doesn't have me very optimistic about what this game is capable of in terms of procedurally generated planets. So like, that's why I'm not on board with that philosophy or that way of thinking.
So
It's just I want that handcrafted feel because that's what makes the game special. How many planets from No Man's Sky do you actually remember?
So here's the problem with your argument, Joe.
Okay.
You started your argument by saying the comparison's valid because we're going on what we know. And then
Yeah.
you proceeded to make a bunch of generalizations about what the 1,000 planets are like. You're not going on what you know. You're going on assumptions.
I'm going off of the knowledge that I have with Bethesda and how they design things.
That's an assumption. You just said we don't know what this game is.
Based on experience. Based off experience. That's a little bit different than a blind assumption, is all I'm saying. It's an assumption based on experience, I think. And Joe, I'm not defending you fully, but an assumption based on experience isn't quite the same thing. I think it is very much
so. Let me ask this then: if you're going to say that, right?
Sure.
Then, if you're going based on experience, the only thing Bethesda has experience with, as you reflect on Skyrim, and everyone always goes back to Skyrim for good reason. But if you reflect on Skyrim and Fallout and Morrowind, and I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
So if you're going based on experience, per your argument, the experience is that things are intricately designed. Again, you're assuming that all these planets are procedurally generated and bland and boring because that's what the internet has told you over the past 2 weeks. There's literally
that's
nothing.
What Todd Howard like literally said, you'll know what planets are procedurally generated and which ones aren't. And that's his words.
Did he make that statement?
You can.
That was in one of the interviews.
If you can find that statement, because I have not seen that.
Sure. Well, that's all I'm gathering from it. So like to me, I'm looking jumping from assumptions of I've experienced procedurally generated. I'm not wowed by it. I'm going off of what made games, open world games, special to me is when they're handcrafted, thoughtfully placed things that get me interested in that world, right? Which Skyrim did perfectly. And then I take a look at what the knowledge that I've seen, what I have from Starfield versus other games that look similar, and going, I'm kind of good. I'm out.
So let me go ahead, Luke. Sorry.
All right. First, Yaz, Joe's not being a Sony pony on this at all. I don't know if you're joking, but I don't think that's where he's going in this one.
Guys, real talk. I have a PlayStation. Let me break this nonsense. I have a PlayStation show. All right. I play on multiple consoles. Let's get that bullshit out of there immediately.
I don't think
I have an Xbox controller next to a PlayStation controller. Let's settle. I play them equally.
All right, let's go to the 1,000 planet aspect of it and the procedural generation. ACG, I wish I could remember his words more aptly and describe what he was saying very well, but he brought in comparisons from games like Elite Dangerous, and there's another very popular Go Explore the Universe type game.
EVE Online?
That might be it. EVE, Elite Dangerous, and No Man's Sky as comparative elements, and the amount of distance might be the right word, but game that you can cover, right? Curated versus procedurally generated. And I left having watched his video far less concerned about the 1,000 planets than when I initially heard it, because like you and many, that to me really bothers me. I'm like, oh, that's too big, too much, right? It's a Witcher 3 problem in some ways where the scope is scary. Scope can be scary, Ains. I think that's a fair thing to say. Scope can be scary. Now, when you go to, I think that's a fair statement. I mean, we talk a lot about people with time, or they don't have the time on their hands, or the content that's generated on FOMO elements. But nonetheless, when we look at what Starfield chose to show and chose to say, I get really frustrated when, even in our own chats, Ains, when I see people say like, that's a lazy comparison. It's not. They chose to show you mining a wall right away. They chose to show you walking in a spacesuit as you would. And when you see those things and people, Joe or otherwise, have nothing to go on but that comparison, it's going to be made. It's like the Breath of the Wild comparison. It's the staple for open world exploration, right or wrong. I don't think it's a lazy comparison if it allows people to understand it. And in many ways, it really did look like No Man's Sky. And the onus is on Bethesda, and thus Xbox, to change that mindset or embrace it accordingly. I myself even got excited. I went in and played some No Man's Sky. PSA, don't ever do that. They have 16-point achievements all over that thing. Don't do that. That's a
do they really?
It's such a it's terrible. But But I will also say that it can't be dismissed as a No Man's Sky, and that bothers me too, right? When people are dismissing it as such. We still don't know truly what Starfield looks like. We saw some cool stuff in there. We saw some things that people got excited about, some people got like swayed to and from, but the onus is on them, and they've done a lot of talking and not enough showing. They showed in this one, but they've got, I can't tell.
7 days,
I don't know what's
21
that is.
hours on Halo Infinite. All right? Sony Pony, if it was on PlayStation, I'd love it. Get that shit out of my face.
I don't think
so
he was
stupid.
Pull
Touch
up
the
your Sea of
fucking
Thieves
grass.
ones. We play that a lot too.
Ooh, Sea of Thieves. Yeah, okay.
Nonetheless, I wanted to really point out that comparison element, Ains, because that was on them that they showed stuff. That, I mean, like the character looks like he's from No Man's Sky, but a realistic version, right? I would think that one was. I would think that one's a cartoon version of the
not
other.
in a spacesuit. How different do you want him to look? Like
The spacesuits look very similar.
But here,
The mining
here
looks
again,
similar.
you just went down the same path. So here's I'm not, again, I want to be clear that I'm not like overtly
18 days, 11
Okay,
hours
man.
in
Joe,
Sea
let
of
it go.
Thieves.
Let it go.
I just
Joe.
hate it. The thing I hate is like if I have something critical to say about Xbox, it's a PlayStation guy. Of course he's going to. If I see something remotely negative about PlayStation, he's just an Xbox and PlayStation clone. Shut up. You're annoying. You make this space suck.
I don't think he was doing that.
I hope he wasn't, because you triggered me something.
I was gonna say
fierce.
you're getting a little aggressive. It's the shirt. It's the shirt, guys.
It's the shirt. It's the shirt. It's the sun.
His angry shirt.
The confidence has risen up, and now he's angry at the world. Where was I going? So Hassan
you think I'm excited for Volcano High, whatever that teen dinosaur drama is?
Gosh,
because
Joe.
it was on PlayStation Showcase. Get a grip. Concrete Genie was a 6. All right, I'm good.
Sifu's a great game, by the way. I just had this sitting here for some reason. I have two.
Are we showing games that we're playing?
I have 2 of these Vengeance Edition sealed, just sitting here. Anyway, we're getting you.
I know. I'm scared. I'm scared.
No, it's just constant. It's just constant. Every comment section I'm ever in, and I say something remotely that is just remotely just a criticism, a remote criticism. People are like, it's like, relax.
Yeah, I think he's he hears it too much is the point. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let me get to some of Hassan's comments. So the problem with the direction, and now it's going to be lost because we just tailored off for 5 minutes. But
yeah, I'm sorry.
Again, so Luke, your point about the trailer, like I understand what you mean, right? They showed him landing, they showed him mining, they showed him creating a ship, and all of that. We know currently in the space as No Man's Sky-ish. That's fine. The problem is that I can't tell where your argument lies here. Like Joe, like you say, we're going off of expectation. And then you make a bunch of assumptions. And Luke, you said you're going off of expectation, or excuse me, you're going off a base of experience, but then coming back and saying we call it No Man's Sky because that's all we know. It's like, well, if you go based on experience, to your point, and you know what a Bethesda single player full Todd Howard team RPG is, the last of which was Fallout 4, Fallout 3, Skyrim, Oblivion, etc. You can go on experience to know what this game is going to play like. And if you know what this game's going to play like, and you pretty much got a hint of that, because let's be honest, it looked like Fallout in space, right?
Whoa, that's That's an assumption. That's a comparison.
Well, it looked like that, but my point being,
it looked like No Man's Sky.
It looked like No Man's Sky.
No, but
we got him. We lawyered him.
No, you didn't.
No, I don't know why you would say it looked like Fallout in space.
Because you're looking at RPG mechanics, you're looking at combat mechanics, you're looking at not intelligent, but you know what I mean, kind of conversation-esque NPCs and different quests and dialogues. Yeah. None of that is in No Man's Sky. None of it. So immediately the comparison is silly because it's obviously a far different game. The other point, going back to the 1,000 Planets thing, is that people seem to forget. I think this is going to be almost a cop-out. I know that before I say it. But let's be honest with ourselves. These Bethesda single-player RPGs are different. They've always been different. There's not many games like them. There's a reason that Skyrim is freaking 11 years old and still gets played and still sells every day. There's a reason that games like Oblivion are cherished and Fallout 3, et cetera, the list goes on from this team. And that's because they are developed in a way that is very different from most games, where you can go in and you can create the experience that you want to have in that game. They are built in a way where you can do all kinds of wild stuff, and your experience is going to be different from mine, and mine's going to be different from Hassan's and everyone in chat.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the people who enjoy the 1,000 planet aspect is because they've already announced that mods are going to be there on day one. And what you can think, if you start to extrapolate the ideas around shipbuilding and base building and hiring crews to resource gather, right? It allows you to kind of create this almost dynasty across space, across different planets and different ecosystems and biomes, etc. Like if you just imagine, you open your mind to the possibilities. It may not be for you, right? You talk to me about building and resource gathering, I'm already tuned out. I'm bored. Like I don't want to do that, right? But there will be millions of people who do. There's tons.
Sure.
Dan said that he built for so long in Fallout 4, he broke the game because it couldn't keep up with the resources. Like it would drop to like 5 frames, and he has over.
So
300
he's the one person that utilized that.
But see, that's the point. That's your assumption, right?
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions, tens of millions, really, of people play Bethesda games. There is a core community for these big RPGs. And what this game is looking at doing is basically giving you the biggest Bethesda sandbox they've ever created and saying, go do whatever the hell you want. And I think that's exciting. So I think if the game comes out and we play through the story and the story's lackluster and you go to 2 planets and the 1,000 are barren and they're badly procedurally generated, all these things that have been assumed, I don't know why they've been assumed, but they've been assumed. If that happens, then by all means, I think the community will go, what the hell did you do? Like, this sucks. But I don't think it's fair to put those criticisms on the game just yet, in my opinion. I'll stop ranting now.
That's fair enough.
No, I think that's a really good argument, Ains, and you make a very good point about the mods being open from day one. And in all likelihood, Starfield's going to have legs that extend very, very far, well past release. Man, it's funny we can barely see the dog, but whatever Ains is doing, it's quite fun.
I'm trying to get him to jump up so he can say hi, but he's too dumb to know what the hell's going on.
So are we playing? This seems like a play.
The modded element of it is absolutely the win, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the win for the long-term benefit of this game. I'm gonna play. Well, at least let me rephrase that. At this point in time, I think that I'll be playing a Golden Path scenario, but I would have said the same thing about Elden Ring and been justifiably very wrong. But to me, the random exploration element doesn't appeal to me at this time. And that's where I have trepidation on 1,000 planets. But I feel less of it the more I hear. And I think the onus is going to be on them to sell it to someone like me. And cheers to them for that. They do have a lot to prove as a publisher or a developer, though. And I think it's silly that people pretend like they don't. Their games consistently launch buggy. Fallout 76 was an extreme disappointment for a year or 2 years. And it's not like they're hitting their release dates. So those are 3 kind of big knocks against them that they get a lot of like Nintendo. They get a lot of like, hey, it's okay. But sometimes I think it's a little bit too much of an afforded leeway.
Yeah, like when there were reports of like, yeah, this engine's still rough. And we're like, well, come on now. This is just reports. And then it gets delayed. It's like, maybe those reports, there's some weight there. And to me, when I take a look at Starfield, the only thing I'll add to this is like, what I've seen looks like a game I've already played and not interested in. What I'm hearing from you now has me slightly more interested, but call me when there's a Macho Man Randy Savage mod and then I'll go play it. Because as much as I love Skyrim, and I really do love Skyrim, it's one of my favorite open world games. I have not been impressed with that team since. I did not like or enjoy Fallout 4 in the slightest. And I kind of feel like that is what I'm like also getting with like Cyberpunk, which it's like maybe I just don't like RPGs that are like first person shooters. Like when I'm like where these guys kind of feel like bullet sponges, kind of, that kind of felt like that in Fallout 4 and in Cyberpunk. So maybe that's why I'm not blown away by it. If I could swing a sword around, I'm all for it. But maybe when I get the blaster in my hand, that's the thing that's really putting me off. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to your point, Luke, as well, that we hear that there may be issues with getting the game out on time. It gets delayed, and then we get the Todd Howard showcase we were all expecting. And you saw the hiccups, right? It wasn't super smooth. There's frame rate issues and things like that. And if that's obviously the best they could display it right now, it needs work. So we'll see. I completely agree that Bethesda games always have enough issues at launch. I was just saying, and Sark was pointing out that Skyrim's a much, much better game now. And, now it is for sure. I don't think anyone debates that. But let's remember that Skyrim was also one of the highest rated games of all time. Still is. From launch.
They would eat your PS3 save constantly. That's why the only reasonable version to play was like either 360 or PC.
It's true.
It's true.
Yeah. A lot of issues on PS3 back then. But I mean, this is one of those games that has the weight of the world on its shoulders. And when it releases, there's going to be love and criticisms from all angles. And it's going to be a mess. And by a mess, I mean the social space about it is going to be a mess. And I just hope that I prefer to be positive. I hope it launches well. I hope it's not super buggy. I hope it fulfills the single player RPG promise we all hope. But nothing is guaranteed. That's for damn sure.
Well, I can guarantee it's going to sell Xboxes. That's for sure. I think that's going to happen.
I think it's going to make PlayStation out of business. And we could all cheer that day.
Well, I'll tell you what, PlayStation's riding high right now after what happened to Xbox this past week. In a week where we got all this megaton news with Riot Games partnering with Xbox to bring stuff to Game Pass, with Persona, a huge PlayStation franchise, arriving into Xbox.
Never saw it coming.
It was only some 3, 4, 5 days later that PlayStation delivered the blow through Square Enix that Xbox shall never recover.
Dead.
Oh my god.
Dead. Guys,
Dead.
Square Enix absolutely hates Xbox, and they refuse to put Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth seemingly on that platform. Can I tell you, watching the fallout to this was freaking hilarious because first of all, Square Enix, they were kind of douchey in the way they presented it. Here's Crisis Core Remake, and we're making Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but only on PC and PlayStation, and really just PlayStation to start. It was a weird week. That's for sure.
Yeah. It is, I think the narrative around this has obviously been kind of all over the place. I don't know if I forget who said it or who I was talking to that made a good point. It might have been Travis, actually, that he was pointing out, and obviously a lot of the Xbox only guys have pointed to the year timed exclusivity on the packaging, right? But we also need to remember, I think the point he was making, that those contracts have a lot to do, right? And they're very specific about how things are ordered and everything else. And what he speculated could have happened, which I, just knowing the way these contracts are, could be very plausible, is that when Square signed this deal with PlayStation, the plan was that Final Fantasy VII Remake 1 would have a year exclusivity on PlayStation. Then it would come to PC and Xbox or what have you. But their development time for Rebirth and Part 3, now that it's a trilogy, right, might have been planned to be a lot shorter when they signed this contract. And knowing that they've now, obviously COVID hit, we know we don't have to rehash that for the 100th time. But knowing that I've now learned this week and been educated by a lot of commentary, that this is like, it's not simply a remake of Final Fantasy VII. It's a whole new game and a sequel and all this stuff tied into one. That development has gone so long that there could be something in the contract that essentially says, like, Part 1 can't go to competing consoles until Part 2 has released. Or something like that. There could be more to it. And they made the assumption that this is a timed exclusivity for just a year, right? Because they were thinking, okay, we'll have Part 2 out next year, no problem. All other things happen all the time in development, and maybe now there's something else to it. I think the long story short, the long-winded way that I've already now covered for 4 minutes is that there's probably something else at play here that's stopping the game from coming to Xbox, not just that Square Enix hates Xbox and hates money.
But you
Because
do think that's part of it, right?
but because you know, there's something else at play for sure.
Yeah, I think the reactions to what we saw may have been better than what we actually saw. And don't get me wrong, like I really did enjoy Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's my first Final Fantasy game that I actually beat. Because I know, guys, this has maybe come to a shocker to some. Not really big into Final Fantasy. I know this.
But you play PlayStation.
I know.
You know
What
why? Because you never played the good Final Fantasies. That's
Oh yeah, which ones are those?
4, 6, and 9.
There aren't any.
Oof.
Gotcha. I like Luke's answer
I'm
more.
not a Final Fantasy.
It's a stupid
fan.
franchise.
Whoa! I'm flipping that.
Oh.
I'm flipping that.
He's got, yeah, all right. Keep going,
going.
He's
Joe.
got
No,
beautiful
please, keep
glowing
going.
hair.
It's just this dumb
Here's to
franchise
Keanu.
with his stupid sword and his hair is triangly. And like back in the day to play it, you had to click. Do you want to run? Do you want to attack? Do you want to defend? Do you want to take a potion? Up, your turn's gone. It's over. What? What is this? What is this?
Dude, playing it on hard mode is no joke. That doesn't even
Flipping that.
sound like fun to me. That being said, though, like the game looked great. Like
It did.
Rebirth looks like good. I'm all for it. But like the reactions that people got afterwards were just like, guys, they never promised you anything.
That's
Like
the
they
part
never
that's
said
weird.
on they never said on the edge of the box saying coming to other platforms. It did. It came to PC. There you go. Contractual obligation fulfilled. And to me, you know, seeing some people's reactions of like how could they have done this to Xbox, and does Square Enix hate Xbox after Square Enix, you know, put Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers on Game Pass, and both games are doing great. From what Luke's saying, Avengers is doing great on Game Pass. Like they don't. There's just something in the way of this deal. Maybe that's Sony. Maybe Sony was just like, hey, you know what? This franchise or this set of games is so, you know, renowned or known for it being on this platform that we don't want to let it go. Fine. Like that's their obligation. That's all right. Like it's business, right? Like, am I a big fan of, you know, the Activision Blizzard deal? Really, that kind of blows for me as someone who wants to play, you know, all their Blizzard and Activision games solely on my PlayStation. But it's up to Microsoft. They bought it. It's their money. It's now their IP. They get to choose wherever those IP lay. So, like to me, this was just such a obviously business played a part here. So who cares? At this point, to me, it's like if you wanted to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, you probably would have played it by now.
That's the part that gets me is it's one of those, if you really love Square Enix games, you probably have a PlayStation. I mean, there's plenty that are over on Xbox, but the reality is if you wanted Final Fantasy VII, you would have a PlayStation. Just as the reality for me many times is if I want to play the best superhero games, I'm probably going to play them on PlayStation right now. You know, that's just part of it. And I didn't like the delivery of the messaging. I thought it was very weird how they announced the remakes and then some of them were going to mobile and PC. Like the delivery and the messaging is a little muddled, but at the same time, anyone that's crying foul, like somehow Xbox fans are so slighted, I would point them instead to saying, look at the riches that you just got with the entire Persona franchise. Look at all of the Activision Blizzard love that you're about to get into your platform. Look at the Riot deal, and then look at what Game Pass has offering you in the JRPG category that it wouldn't have had 5 years ago. I mean, all the Yakuzas were there. Kingdom Hearts made an appearance through there. They're working very hard to bring that genre in. And if anything, Microsoft has shown, and this was pointed out by many people over the last few weeks, this is not an original idea, but I'm bringing it in. The Xbox's demographic branding, it's so far removed from its dude bro Call of Duty, Doritos, and Mountain Dew. So far gone is that mindset. Agreed, good, but it took it a generation, right?
Yeah.
And I still don't know
least.
where they are now.
Yeah.
I still don't know what defines them now. They would say it's everybody plays and we all win kind of thing. I don't know that they're there yet until they deliver on that full cadence of Game Pass. But
yeah, I agree.
It's pretty cool.
So I agree entirely with you guys on this.
We did it.
Well, all three of us
We
are
as
in
Cast
agreement.
Co-op agreed.
So I agree entirely, but let me play devil's advocate because I know there's probably some people watching or gonna watch, but I know this is a thought in the mentality because there was a huge debate on our Discord the other day, Season Gaming Discord, and Eric, Game Positive, who writes for SG, he was making the point to someone else. So someone else said the exact same thing you just said, Joe and Luke, right? Eric was making the point, and I want to see if you guys think this holds any weight, that even though it wasn't specifically said it's coming to Xbox, right? That generally speaking, in the industry, when there is a timed exclusive agreement, right, that is specifically advertised as a timed exclusive agreement, typically you can expect the game to come to the other platform at the end of that agreement. And even if it doesn't, usually the company will at least acknowledge or speak to the fact that, hey, we don't currently have any plan, even if they're not planning on it. Why haven't they just come out and said, sorry, we're currently developing this, and Final Fantasy 16 and other stuff, and we can't do the port to Xbox right now, but we'll be looking at it in the future. His point was the sheer fact that they haven't even spoken about it or acknowledged it is very different from what we traditionally see in the industry.
You make a good point, and often as well.
That's what Eric said, not me. But
Eric makes a good point there, and I'll also note that with those timed exclusivity deals, I don't like them very much. More and more,
nobody does really.
We and I get that it might help some projects finish, like they get funded to finish their projects. We've talked about that on our show, but like Inside was meant to be this grand Xbox exclusive, went to PlayStation, good, right? Tunic, amazing Xbox exclusive, went to PlayStation. I still think that's good, you know. Indies that are often featured in timed exclusivity, unless it's helping them finish the project, I don't like that. I really appreciate when games are multi-platform. I guess I'm just, it's not to say that I'm over exclusives. That's a silly statement. I'm not over exclusives, but I don't like when I or my friends have to make a tough choice on a game, right? Fall Guys was just celebrated for coming to Xbox today, and it's got cross progression. That's huge.
Yep. And Switch.
Awesome. Too. And Switch as well. Yes, correct. Sometimes I forget that Nintendo exists. Can I tell you all that? That's a real thing that happens to me. I just got Mario Strikers. It's sitting over there. I forget sometimes.
Maybe you want to return that.
Do I? Is it bad?
Yeah, apparently Sean was just like, this got the Nintendo bump. There's no way this game is an 8. There's no way this game's a 7.
No, I talked to Travis. Travis reviewed it actually for IGN. I don't know what he gave it. He said the gameplay is really, really good, but it has zero content. There's he said you can go through the entire content of that game in like an hour and you're done. So unless you're playing with kids or co-op or something, there's not much to it.
Did Travis cash his Nintendo check? Is he rich now?
By the way, Dylan in the chat said, I just want to comment on this. Did you all see people complaining that multi-plat games at the Xbox show didn't say they were coming to other platforms? As if when you see them at other shows, they don't say they're multi-plat. It's just part of the marketing. When PlayStation does a show, even if we saw their third party
that's state of play.
Right? Yeah, it was all third party, yet it just said PlayStation. Xbox is the same. Nintendo's is the same. It's just obviously they're not going to advertise for the other platform. That's a common thing.
Yeah. It's disappointing sometimes when you see people take that narrative and run with it. But I also noted, sorry, I misspoke. It's disappointing when you see that narrative. And then I also wanted to note Captain Logan was saying something about JRPGs. Maybe it was somebody else, JRPGs.
They're all the same because he's right.
Well, I was noting that I don't like JRPGs very much. And the idea of exclusivity being good or bad. And if you think about the future, a lot of Western RPGs are going to be Xbox exclusive.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that either. You know, like that's good for your Xbox community and that's available in a lot of places, PC, cloud, and console. But still, like that's a lot of talent to be making Western RPGs that will be exclusive to a certain ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because, well, it's not funny. It's just the nature of preference, right? But I generally play on my Xbox more, and that's generally because my favorite
Xbox
franchises
fanboy.
there including Halo and Gears, and there's plenty of people who generally play on their PlayStation more, right? Or Switch for that matter. Again, sorry that you do exist, Switch. We love you, kind of, maybe. Nintendo,
Sometimes.
I did a few
the
years
online.
ago.
Fix the online. What are you doing? Come on.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll see you when Splatoon 3 comes out.
but my point was going to be that if you prefer, you just made the point a few minutes ago, Luke, that generally speaking, again, if you prefer Japanese role-playing games, it's pretty widely accepted that you need to be on PlayStation because that's where they live. Even the ones that are on Xbox also live on PlayStation plus others, right?
Mhm.
And it's just that Xbox is going to be the opposite. They're going to be the place for Western RPGs. And personally, I'm a much bigger fan of Western RPGs than I am Japanese role-playing games nowadays. So that's perfect for me. But it just, again, just own all platforms. It's so much better. Just
It's
own
so
them
much
all.
easier.
Be rich.
It's so
Message
much
from the
better.
white guy in the top corner. Be rich.
That's right. Hire some interns to do your own goddamn job. Never take a sick day.
But
Great.
all right, let me back that down a bit. To Luke, to your other point, though, we do live in an era where games are more accessible than ever, right? Like when we were growing up, I'm trying to back out of this as fast as I can.
He's backpedaling. He's backpedaling.
Chugging, I'm sweating.
I
But
got
no,
him, guys. Got him.
but when we were younger, right, you had Genesis, Super Nintendo, TurboGrafx, and there were a ton of games that were only on
Yeah.
one, right?
Mhm.
Nowadays, the vast majority, outside of first-party exclusives, are on all platforms and more accessible than ever, and on PC. So, I mean, we live in an environment where it's better than ever, but still, I mean, it's still going to happen on occasion. I mean,
I often think
Yeah.
it's just the platform of Twitter and podcasts, like people like us, like what we see versus the actual mindset. Because what we are consistently taught and never seem to learn is that all the systems are doing very well, right? Every month we're seeing good news.
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry.
PlayStation's about to go under, you guys.
Really?
So, in all
Inside source,
seriousness, I know where you're going, Luke, and I just want to comment. So I think I mentioned this on Bigcast. I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I did one of the features we did for our patrons. I did like a huge deep dive on all three and their financials, right? I don't know if I mentioned that here or not, but
Plug it. Talk about it.
when you look into it, right, and you really get behind all this nonsense that happens on Twitter every day, and I went through all the revenue streams and all this stuff, like each of them are posting record profits. And it just continues. Like if you look at PlayStation's growth expectations for next year, it's absurd. Absurd. Xbox is very similar. Nintendo is a little different because they're getting long in the tooth in the Switch, right? So they're investing in kind of the future, but it just adding to the point that yes, all three of these are not going anywhere, and they have plenty of money.
Yeah. Now that said, to get back on the Final Fantasy timed exclusive, that's also working on an assumption. Yeah, I'm learning not to work off assumptions that just because company A, B, C, or D says the only time will tell doesn't mean that company G, F, Y, whatever has to do the same either. So AIDS, I think you're right. It's probably something happened with the production of this game, and now it's like, well, we're already pretty long in the tooth with this production. We kind of want to get this out the door, and then we'll start porting it over. And let's be honest, all those people saying they're going to boycott Square are going to purchase those games in droves or download them on Game Pass or whatever.
Right.
So they're fools anyway. But to me, it's also like, nobody ever said Tunic was a timed exclusive. I'm gonna go play Tunic on PlayStation in September, right? So to me, it's like,
just did that with the Game Pass game. Turtles. You're platinuming Turtles, and yet you could just you paid for it, but you played it with us. You play it every time we play it with us. You're on Game Pass.
Yeah. And again, I'm about to platinum that game. I'm playing it on Game Pass. I'm enjoying my goddamn life. Just I feel like just timed exclusive. I understand the frustration because we've assumed and we've been kind of trained that it's one way, but to me, it's like they never said it, so they don't have any obligation to do it.
Yeah.
And I get it. Listen, to me, they are leaving money on the table because that's a great game, and I want it to be experienced everywhere. But also, something also tells me there's something going on behind the scenes, guys.
No, I
All
definitely think
roads
there
lead
is.
to
It
square.
feels like
I
there is,
definitely
and I'm
think
okay
there
with
is.
that. They
But, yeah,
danced.
I think at the end of the day, I mean, what we often forget, we take things personally, and people take things personally in this.
Like I
industry.
did 20 minutes ago when I was frustrated at the
Had an
15th comment of
emotional
today.
breakdown.
It's just so I'm so tired of it.
but
It's
like,
every day I get it. And it
he's still
drives
going,
me
Luke? Is he
nuts.
still
Still
going?
going. The guy wasn't even going after you.
No, he wasn't.
I hope
And
he
we're getting-
wasn't.
We're getting to your comment, Yasin, in 1 second. But I was just gonna say that every day, like, people take decisions that these companies make personally, and you can't do that. It's a business for all of these companies. None of these companies are your friend. They'll treat you like you're your friend. They'll talk to you
No.
on Twitter like they're your friend. They're not your friend. Like,
No,
like they're just companies, guys. So like,
Aaron Greenberg follows me on Twitter, and he does
oh, he
not
follows
follow
me
Luke
too,
on
Joe.
Twitter.
Interesting.
God, it's
So
not
he
fair.
is my friend.
What did I not do? 77 developer interviews. Nothing.
Anyway,
Sorry.
listen.
That's my trigger.
And you know what? I didn't appreciate your alt account because I don't even know who sent the thing at me. I just saw red. I'm like, this is.
So,
just
going
gonna
back
blame
to the
Luke.
conversation, Yasid said the PlayStation Showcase had a similar feeling that the Xbox Showcase has had, which is that the most wanted or hyped games are coming in 2023.
Yep.
And the only thing I'll say, because I know Luke, you said you wanted to comment on this, I think, is the only thing I'll say to that is just remember that's anecdotal, right? We always like to remind people that what you see on Twitter, what you hear on this podcast, and the podcast we all listen to every week is a drop in the bucket of the actual gaming community, not even a drop. It's like invisible. So when we say things like people were really hyped for that showcase, but not this one, it's anecdotal. You're looking at a huge minority of the people who are buying and playing these games.
Yeah. Like, I forget where I said this, but like when we take a look at like who is the biggest, video game content creator, that focuses on, PlayStation, Xbox, or just the stuff that we cover here today. They're considered a mid to small tier creator in the grand scheme of things. So that is something we also have to take a look at. It's just like how, Twitter isn't a real place. So maybe let's not give it all the oxygen in the room when we're talking about stuff. But it's good to dismantle those type of thoughts, because sometimes it feels all consuming. Like this is just all it is negativity. So that's just something I want to point out.
And I do think there is something realistic in that we've seen major big titles get bumped out of this year. And this is the full effect of what work from home did. A lot of companies were able to shift resources and get certain things out the door. And now you're seeing stuff that wasn't close enough for that window to happen. And now we're seeing the full effects of it. And in only this aspect, I think that's kind of a good thing. In only that aspect, people are able to catch up and play stuff they might have missed, or see value in games they may not have tried before, and take advantage of the lack of the biggest, grandest thing. And that again, that's the gaming specific benefit of it, right? Does that make sense?
I would like to pull up Dash's comment here. He says, I shook Aaron Greenberg and Phil Spencer's hands. We're not just friends, we're blood brothers.
I think FanFest fully converted Dash and Kevin into Xbox now. They're just full Xbox. Yeah, they don't even. They actually. Did you see their NXS video where they took an axe to their PS5?
Wow.
Yeah.
So brave of them. So brave.
Yeah, I mean they're heroes, really.
Honestly,
I'm offended by Ains's comment in the chat. You all know that's my trigger. I can't get the senpai at Xbox to notice me. 100 and some odd episodes of XEP. I've had the Xbox execs.
Is he back on this, Joe? He's going again.
It makes me so frustrated.
Listen, I tried to get Shuhei Yoshida on our show. He unfollowed the trophy room. How dare he?
Shut up. Did he really?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
It's probably Yeah, I think you know what it is. Twitter unfollows people like sometimes, so that's probably it. Or probably he's just like, who are these guys that unfollow?
Probably hates
Are you gonna mention why he followed you in the first place?
Yeah, because we harassed him.
Why was it? Why was it?
We harassed him. We were just
No,
like, hey, follow us on Twitter.
No, that's
And
not what
I
happened.
asked you, Ains, I go, Ains, could you retweet? And he did, and then
what
followed
happened?
us.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But
Although I'm sorry, I
I
unfollowed
hate
you.
PlayStation.
Same. All right, so we're gonna get away from my trigger, so I don't have a Joe level rant showing my phone to the camera. Today, we had an argument in DMs, and Joe didn't read much of it. Ains, you wrote a lot, and I read some of it. We debated yet again about the reception to Halo Infinite and games being out for
We're
a
gonna
long
do this.
time. Yeah, that was a good topic, bud. That was a really good topic.
All right,
we got 15 minutes, Kel. Let's do it.
The argument, and Ains, jump in as you need to on this one. The essential argument was Ains being a diehard Halo fanatic and defending and laying his life on the line, laying down for it on broken glass, saying that nobody ever
you've already messed
critique Halo Infinite because you're not a good enough fan. I love Halo. Behind me, my room is adorned with it, but I think it's fair to be critical of some of the shortcomings that Halo Infinite is having. And Ains, you said absolutely not. You think you threatened my life actually for
he did.
Halo.
Yeah.
He did.
I threatened to put you in the sun if you keep it up.
Yeah.
So
you don't understand the connections I have, you fool. That's what he said.
So tell me, Ains,
I can
really
DM Phil Spencer right now. I mean,
I know you can. God, it makes me so. All right. So tell me, friend, in all seriousness, I was lamenting, I think, the lack of content, the frustrations with the store have been mounting more and more for me lately. And I'm genuinely frustrated by what is an otherwise gameplay-wise fantastic experience with Halo Infinite, because I love that game, but I'm frustrated by where we are on June 21st and knowing that where we're going to be post showcases and where we are expected to be by November. I'm frustrated with Halo. So tell me, where you at?
So it's not that I don't agree that there are issues with delivery. In fact, I would say that by and large, nearly everyone agrees with that, right? In fact, I was talking to some others today who love playing it and have a ton of time in it. And so I'll use Pampa as an example here too, because Pampa has even more time in the game than me. So I think I'm closing in on 300 hours. I want to say Pampa has 400 plus or
I
around
can check
that.
mine. Come on.
Yeah.
So here's the point, right? All right, let me back up. So Halo Infinite has been out for 6 months officially, right?
Multiplayer came out in November, right?
I was going to say closing in on 7 for multiplayer.
Okay.
And it also has the benefit, or should have had the benefit, of learning from other live service titles. 343 is a big studio, a lot of people. It's very clear that they underestimated the amount of time and effort and dev work that goes into maintaining a community and live service. I don't think anyone's arguing that's not clear, right?
Right. Yes.
I think the counter argument is that for whatever reason, none of us can say definitively, none of us have a silver bullet, none of us are game devs, right? For whatever reason, it has happened to every single live service game. Everyone. Pick one and name it. The same thing has happened. So just out of curiosity, I went back today and I looked at Sea of Thieves because I know you guys love that game. I looked at Apex again, and I've done this in the past. You can talk. I mean, Destiny is rife with issues with delivery, right? And Fortnite was the same way. Bland it for hell. They stole the Battle Royale mode. We know how that all went, and that took a while to get into a good cadence. Warzone is a mess right now, from what I hear. I'm not a big Warzone player, but they're literally rebooting it later this year. So, and that's some of the biggest studios in the world on Warzone. I mean, you're talking like 6 studios that work on Call of Duty. But anyway, the point being is that I think it's still a little too early. I know it's 7-month post-release, right? But when you're talking live service, 7 months is not a long period of time. If you go back and look, Sea of Thieves didn't really get into a cadence of delivery until year 2. It was 13 months before they had their anniversary update, which was considered when the game kind of relaunched. And then over the past couple years, as you know, they've apparently done a really good job. You guys know better than me. Apex in 6 months had like 2 character ads. That was it. You're playing the same map, same people, same everything for 6 months, right? So if you take
Overwatch, the drought.
Overwatch,
It has
another
been, like,
example.
what is it?
Yeah.
36 months without an update or something like that.
So Logan says bullshit. That's fine, Logan. Why don't you go look at the dates and then you can leave chat and I'll talk to you later.
AIDS is getting it.
I'm
AIDS
getting mad now. But the point being, right, 7 months is no amount of time in the live service arena.
Right.
And I think in terms of what they have delivered, it hasn't been spectacular. No one's saying that, right? But we've gotten maps, we've gotten new game modes, the armor selection,
3 game modes, and
they did 3 game modes in season 2.
Okay.
So they did. You've got Land Grab, Last Spartan Standing, Team Snipers, King of the Hill.
Team Snipers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're saying what was that's fair. I mean, what you've added since launch, but I mean, there's several.
Sure.
Yeah, you've had the maps, but the other point to take into account here, right, is not only is 7 months of time not a lot in the live service arena, but people often forget. And again, 343 should know this. I'm not making excuses for them, right? Like, you knew what you were trying to deliver with this game,
right,
which the scope is ridiculous. But it has a fully fledged campaign, right? That is widely celebrated. We know what the reviews were for Halo Infinite and its campaign, and
Great
widely
campaign.
Celebrated. Yeah.
Yep.
You have multiplayer. You have multiplayer. And as you know, Forge is in testing right now, which the leaks are starting to come out and people are starting to realize, holy shit, this has more than we've ever imagined it would have. Well, yeah, because they basically bit off more than they could chew, right? Mm-hmm. in the timeline here. So
we think.
Fair. Yeah, it hasn't been delivered yet. So yeah. And they still have a lot to deliver. They've got campaign co-op, Forge, getting to 3-month seasons, right? So again, I agree that it hasn't been ideal. It's pretty clear that there's some issues behind the scenes. There's a reason Joe Stoughton was brought in. There's a reason it didn't hit its original launch date, right? All that's clear. What I'm simply saying is 7 months isn't a lot of time for live service. Look at every other game that launched as a live service and compare, and you'll see that not much is delivered in the first 6 months. And if we get to 2023, right, end of this year, beginning of next year, and season 3 comes out and it's 3 months, and we get a look at this, what is it, Tatanka mode, right? The BR mode from Certain Affinity. And we start to get more game modes and other things delivered. I think Halo Infinite is going to be just fine. And I'm fully confident that long-term, it's going to be just fine. Now, if we get to 2023, another 6 months, another 8 months, and we're like a year and a half in, and there's still 6-month seasons, there's still kind of the same content we're getting right now, then we have a much, much different conversation. But so, I just still think, I know it's 6 months, 7 months. It feels like a lot of time, but in live service, it's not.
So hold on, Joe. Let me note this. The crux of the argument was not that we disagree on those points. I think it was the frustration that they had the ability, and they demonstrated the ability within a Microsoft ecosystem via Sea of Thieves, via Gears of War, to showcase good battle passes and progression levels. And they had the roadmaps to do that. The blueprints to do that. And seemingly they did not. They did not execute on that, evidenced by 2 6-month battle passes, multiple event changes, by store pricing issues, by currency things. And they've adapted quickly on some levels. On others, I call BS when they say that they're being transparent and adapting. I think there's too much strife there. But the question was asked also, was like, well, Luke, did you play Sea of Thieves in the first year? No, I bowed out, and I waited until Sea of Thieves hit after its year. I waited
as
until
did
Avengers.
Most people.
Yeah, and a fair point. And I can point to Avengers where I did that, Destiny 1 where I did that. Multiple live service games.
Apex, I did that too. I loved Apex at launch, and then after like a few weeks, I was like,
see, we stayed in Apex for a good bit. Just our gaming group did. Joe, Kevin, and I. But
I'm real good at Apex.
Yeah, we are in on Halo still, playing it regularly despite the lack of rewards and things to progress, because the gameplay is so good. But it frustrated me that they had blueprints within their own ecosystem that they seemingly didn't follow. That's the part that really bothers me where I'm at.
Yeah, so my frustration with Halo isn't like, oh, they'll get it eventually. I hope they do. And when we're trying to measure successes of Halo, it's like, what is Halo like? Do we want it to be like right next on the Twitch page next to like Fortnite or League of Legends? Like, that's probably not it. So like, what does success for Halo look like to us? Is to the individual. My frustration with Halo is you had a game called Sea of Thieves that is in your ecosystem, that is, one of your brother/sister studios, right? Go through all the learning pains of what it takes to make a games as service game, whether how many updates happen in year one or not. You had all the advice that you could ask, and seemingly they asked none of it. Because like the battle pass is a mess. Battle pass isn't good. Progression doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel rewarding.
Yeah, I don't agree. The battle pass is a mess. I don't. I know you guys have said that, but I don't know what you mean by that.
I don't think it's a mess, but the core customization and the length of time are two problems.
Yeah.
Well, the time, yeah. I mean, we know that, right? No one wants 6 months, but yeah, I don't. I mean, it's 100 level battle pass with cosmetics. I mean, it's pretty much what every game does.
So the reason why I don't like it is the way you level up in that battle pass.
The challenges,
it just aren't great.
Yeah,
that's what I mean by a mess.
That's fair.
Also, yeah, customization. Let me customize my Spartan. Don't give me these like what colors I can or can't pick on my Spartan. That is frustrating. I know they're fixing it, but
too much red.
Right out the gate.
There's so much red, and there's so many good palettes. They use red.
Other colors.
I want blue. I want
There's
green.
Other colors. Give me a purple. But like that's my frustration. It's like they saw this studio go through all of it, and they were just like, "Hey, maybe could you tell us how you did it?" and it seemingly was none of that. That's my frustration. It's I understand. Sea of Thieves had a lot of time to improve upon itself, and because it's not under the scrutiny like a Halo is, we kind of like shoo it away. But to me, I would argue that like, yeah, Sea of Thieves did have content, a lot of it in the first year. I would argue to say that Apex, yeah, if we want to look at a broad scope or whatever, like only 2 heroes, I think it had a lot of content at the start. I think what we're looking at Halo is we're looking at a game that's coming into, before Apex, what other battle royale games were there? Fortnite and PUBG. Well, now we can list off a dozen of these games just on the Twitch page alone. That's Halo's problem, is that it is not, 5 years ago, it is now. And now you have stiff competition because like Forge mode is great. All the content that they hopefully come out with in November, that all sounds great, but Call of Duty is right there. And Call of Duty had a hype train around it right now with Modern Warfare 2 being so beloved and them seemingly taking a lot of care with it. Warzone 2 is coming out later this year, right? So like you have your competitors that are out there, whether Activision gets, is owned or not by Microsoft at the end of the day, those competitors out there are hungry. And you have to make a strong argument why you should be played and not that other one. So that's really it. You don't want to be Battlefield.
Yeah, agree. And I think that's the biggest problem. I don't necessarily agree with the Sea of Thieves comparison because you're talking about drastically different games, right? Like a delivery for Sea of Thieves, not to downplay what Rare's done, because you guys tell me all the time how amazing they've gotten over the past few years, which is awesome. But you think about
different game.
That's great.
Sorry.
Yeah. But you think about the competitive sense in Halo and all the tuning and the HCS and all these other things they have. Like I said, scope is a major factor here, but that doesn't take away, to your point, Joe, which I agree with, which is you have other examples in the industry. And we know that, all the industry kind of expertise and all these people, they're a very close-knit group across these studios. There's no reason why you couldn't have had certain affinity in there helping you earlier on. There's no reason why you couldn't have learned from Respawn and what happened in Apex Legends early on, or, Fortnite, or all these other games we've talked about, because there's plenty of examples nowadays. And that's why I kind of said it's it is bizarre to me still that in 2022 we still have live service games launching that are just barren for that initial kind of, launch period, whatever that is. So I completely agree on that front. And we're not going to talk about Battlefield. That doesn't even Hometown Hero. He says it exists. Does it? I mean,
I hate
not really.
He'll the one guy on that server.
Yeah.
I saw Logan really passionately going after you, Ains, on the Sea of Thieves comparisons, but I want to note that I appreciate the amount of updates that games like Sea of Thieves and I know you guys will really back off on this one. Avengers has had a ton of those too. Like we're getting a new hero next week in Avengers, Jane Foster. It's a whole new thing, and they're getting massive updates. We're talking about the stuff though that is impactful on a level that brings in scores of new players. If I was to equate this to Avengers, it'd be the Wakanda expansion that got people to check out the game. Joe booted that game up. The anniversary update got people in Sea of Thieves to check it out. The no build mode in Fortnite got people to check it out. BR will do that for Halo Infinite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
we're not talking about just some cosmetics and simple updates, which is all we've gotten in Infinite so far, right? That's the problem. But again, if you look at some of the things we're talking about, that's all they were too. The big updates that are more substantial, to your point, Luke, I'm agreeing, are further and farther out. And Dano also mentions Halo MCC, which still to this day, I'm not sure I've ever played a game at launch that was as messed up as that game.
That was a mess.
And it's now people don't even realize it's nearly 8 years later. That game came out in 2014. Now it's probably, in my opinion, the greatest collection of games ever made. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what that game has done, but it took them years, to get to that point.
Yeah,
it'll be second best when the Cowabunga collection happens.
Yeah, maybe third because Mass Effect collection exists.
Great collection as well. It's true.
Great collection.
Somebody buy that helmet from me. God, what a waste of money. Just sitting in there.
All right, so listen,
I told you what
me
to
off
do
the
with
cliff.
it, dude.
Yeah,
I told you what to do with it. Just put it away, and when the new Mass Effect comes out, sell it, profit, move on.
You're right.
Yeah, no, I only wear it when I'm having sex with Luke's mom. So listen, you got me off the cliff with Starfield. Fine. I'm not a Sony pony. I've proven it.
I don't know. I still have doubts.
It's just I literally got rid of 15 comments in just my YouTube section today.
So I don't want to interrupt you, Joe, but one of the points I forgot to make was we still play Halo all the time.
All the time.
Playing yesterday.
And that's because, as we know, right, the core design mechanics, the core gameplay, the fluidity of it are amazing. The sandbox is amazing. And that foundation is there. Could you imagine? I'm not trying to back up any Halo. What I was going to say is, could you imagine if they didn't nail those aspects? I mean, good God, It would be literally 343's building would be on fire right now.
They should have. They would have
343 building.
They should have. Yeah. They nailed so much. I think that's the frustration, and it comes from the anger that I have. I mean, love makes you do crazy things. Like the anger I have comes from we play it almost every day. Do we play Halo? And we have a blast with it. It is so much fun, but it bothers me because every single game my Spartan doesn't quite look the way I want because I can't get the right I can't get the right pallets, or I can't get the right this with that. Like I still don't have the shoulder I want on my Halo Reach core. I just want Noble One's shoulder on my and like little stuff that they said.
Carter.
Carter.
Yeah. I thank you. I yell all the time. I was telling Papa we were playing Halo last night, and I said the one thing that drives me crazy is I don't have Carter's goddamn shoulder unlocked.
Right,
that's it drives me nuts.
And it says it's vaulted when it was never available.
I agree.
I don't know little stuff like that frustrates me, and I get frustrated when I see store prices hike up or kick back up, and they call it a rare item when it's like, yo, dog, I can't even see my character except in the precursors. At least in Fortnite, when I buy a bundle for $20, I get all these little elements that I can see throughout my game, and there's a value to that. So if I'm willing to Spider-Man
do a flip,
and I'm willing to spend money in Infinite. That's not something that bothers me to do. I will spend money in games. I spend money in Sea of Thieves regularly, Fortnite regularly. I like supporting the games that I love, Avengers regularly. But when they stop me from doing so, or they make it difficult to justify, that bothers me, because if I have the income to spend and I'm not a whale and I want to do it, there's an element to that gets me.
And just to add, because you say I never criticize, I think I've shown I've
We're
hope
giving
I've
our
shown
yeah,
I'm a little
that's an
more
example.
balanced than normal. But I'll even add that they've had some unfortunate issues throughout that should not happen. They've had bugs release as part of updates that shouldn't happen. Like the last update that the last update fixed a bunch of bugs from the prior update. The prior update had bugs like grenades exploding more than once. Like,
Mhm.
how does that happen
How?
in a competitive
Weapon
shooter?
jamming.
Which happened. I play ranked, right, with Pampa.
Mhm.
Funny enough, he's in the chat, and it'd be like click, 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 and then nothing would happen, and you die. And I'm like, I'm gonna lose my damn mind.
You can't do
Like,
that.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff just can't happen in a game that is this. It's up here, right? Halo is held up here, right or wrong. I think right. It needs to be held up here. You can't have that stuff happen. So I think between expectations not being met and I'm sorry, I completely forgot. Let me get to this comment. This is a few minutes ago now, but Yasa said, I think Halo gets more scrutiny due to launch delay and some of the expectations that Joseph Staten gave gamers every 3 months, new content, etc. In retrospect, it felt a bit disingenuous, and I think that's fair. It does, and they have come out, and he has apologized, and they do live streams, and they do the right thing from a transparency and communication standpoint. Still doesn't fix the problem at the end of the day. So,
But is it really when those problems still like persist?
that's the point, right? Like,
now
it's at a point where you gotta show up, but like enough talking, right? Like, I appreciate the transparency. We always talk about that, and I love the updates. I love their social team. I think they have a lot of good people there, right? And keep doing those, but you have to deliver. The next 6 months for Halo are critical, in my opinion.
Do y'all ever get? Sometimes I worry. This is true about a lot of things, even outside of gaming, social issues, wanting to be critical of elements and fear of the backlash that could come with it. I think it's frustrating when and track me on this, because I'm trying to be sincere here and I don't want it to sound disingenuous. I get frustrated when I so vehemently appreciate the anti-crunch model, but when that's introduced as justification ahead of bad news, I sometimes get frustrated when I see when I hear it from a smaller studio or a mid-tier studio, or even the first few times on a major studio. I'm like, yo, it's cool. Take your time. When I hear it on the flagship franchise with the biggest and the highest budget studio consistently, because 343 has consistently done that. And I'm not a 343 hater, by the way. I think they made the best Halo to date. I think they've made 2 of the best Halos to date, in 4 and in Infinite. But when I hear that as used as an excuse or used as a reason for, sometimes I find myself going down well, you need to hire more people. You need to figure out the pipeline. Where's the issue? By now, that stuff should be solved. And I fear saying that sometimes because it can so easily be taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Fear. I don't know if it's fear being can't. I don't know.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Luke, ever since January 6th, you've been a little sheepish.
Knew we were going to get
country. That's right. But like I think it goes back to what we were originally stating with things like Starfield or like these conferences. It's expectations. And I think 343 has not done a good job with setting the expectations of what you should expect from them just in general. And that kind of sucks, because like, how transparent can you be when all these problems are still happening X many months off of the release? And that is my frustration. Is just like, dude, I am tired of playing the same maps over and over and over again, right? I'm not. I have problems with big team battle and with the cosmetics, and they still persist. And as much as I love this game, those issues to me shouldn't be there at this point. Because
Nope.
yeah, like how does a Fortnite keep doing the amazing things that they're doing, and Halo is owned by one of, if not the rich, depending on the day, the richest company in the world, and you can't fill this thing with content, fill this thing with bodies to solve this problem. It is infuriating.
Yeah. No, I'm completely with you guys. And Logan says the issue is scope and management.
Yeah.
And Lucius says even if they told us those expectations, they still fail to meet the bar. And they're both right. I agree completely, and I know where you're going with that, Luke, because there's such a sensitivity around crunch conversation in the industry for good reason. There's a lot of issues with the way development is managed. However, at the end of the day, to your guys' point, they just spent $70 billion, right, to buy Activision, right? And you are talking about the flagship franchise. Literally, I mean, we've joked about this before, but there's quite a few people who have said it, and I think Ed Freeze might have said it when you talked to him, Luke, is that Xbox does not exist without Halo. Yeah. Period. There's a lot of speculation that if Halo CE didn't hit like it did, and obviously Halo 2 after it, that the original Xbox was a failed experiment and Microsoft walks away. And it is just kind of confounding that we're in a place right now where we're talking about the biggest internal studio at Microsoft first party and their flagship studio, and we're talking about they need more resources. That should not even be a conversation coming out of our mouths or anyone's mouths. And it's I understand, believe me, I'm in app development. I understand it's not as simple as just throwing bodies at it. That's not how it works, right? You can't just hire 10 people and say, hey, speed this up. It doesn't work that way, right? However, they should have had enough foresight and management to understand the resources they needed ahead of time and made sure those teams and the pipeline management and all the delivery scheduling and QA and UAT testing and all those things that go into this, that should have been better managed ahead of time.
Yeah.
The only thing I can infer from what Joseph Staten says, and I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt as much as I can, is that when his last interview, he said, in his last couple interviews, he's spoken to the fact of, we're shifting a lot of things around. We need to, where it feels like we're moving slower right now so that we can move faster down the road. And what I'm hoping that means is exactly what we're talking about, which is all these things are going on behind the scenes in terms of hiring, moving resources, bodies, agreements, etc., to get their pipeline better ready to produce faster down the road. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of a ramble, but
no, it's a good finisher.
Yeah.
A good finisher. I like it, boys. I ups and downs on this show, but I really enjoyed it. It was a good episode.
Yeah.
Oh man, $15 super chat coming in. You want to pop that one up there? Unnecessary and appreciated.
Yes, I got you. Pampa always generous over here at Season Gaming.
Pampa says, this is an excuse, but I don't care. Halo will never get a fair shake. It has so many boxes to check. Great campaign, great multiplayer, competitive multiplayer, new maps, cosmetics, etc. Someone will always be disappointed. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I don't think he's wrong at all. Him and I talk about this almost on a daily basis, literally. Because him and I play Halo more than, most of the time. And we've talked about this before. We play ranked, we play late at night, and him and I are always talking about this. And it's true. I can't think of but a handful of franchises that have the microscope on them in the industry like Halo does. And then if you take those other franchises and compare them to Halo, and you think about the scope of what they have to deliver every time they deliver a new Halo, it's massive.
Yeah.
And the interesting point about that, and not to keep going on this for too long, but when they made Halo CE and Halo 2, the scope of delivering a game with a campaign and multiplayer was X, right? Nowadays, and over time, they've had campaign co-op, and they created Forge, and they started to create this community of custom maps and a custom game browser and custom games. And now you
Firefight, PvE.
Firefight, PvE, all these things they've added over the years have been innovative in, right? It's become an expectation, right? It's become an expectation that Halo represents an amazing AAA, big budget blockbuster campaign. And then it's also got to deliver an amazing, big, sweet, battle pass ridden multiplayer. But it's also got to support competitive and a global Halo championship series community, right? And it's got to support pro teams and esports. Oh, but they also got to support Forge and creators and developers and content creators. And it's got to have a custom game browser. And and you see me, I can't reach anymore, but it just keeps going and going and going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, think about that. And then think about how much development time has increased for each of those things in the past 20 years. And the scope, it goes back to scope. The scope of that is just unbelievable. Like, it gives me anxiety thinking about managing that. I would never want to manage that ever.
Agreed.
You couldn't pay me enough.
I can do it. I can fix that studio in like 15 minutes. Well, I know what's wrong.
Good compare. You want to make your joke? Go ahead, make your joke.
And only I know how to
Joe's
fix
like,
it.
hire more people, you dumbasses.
Yeah, just hire more. Just hammers, chisels, whatever you need. Laptop. How hard is it?
Hey, we built the damn pyramids. Make the game. What are you doing?
Nobody knows how that's done. That was done like,
It's true. Slave labor.
Yeah.
Right. I heard there was a lot of crunch when they made the pyramids. Have we talked about that?
A couple hundred years. Couple decades, rather, I should say. The comparative point that I would point out as we close is Naughty Dog. They nixed their multiplayer element for Last of Us 2. They nixed it in favor of making it be a post-launch release, and then because of their scope, they had to expand it into its own thing. And I feel like that's what Halo is attempting to do with its free-to-play model for multiplayer and its campaign separate. But nonetheless, I think that's it for our show for this week.
I'm sleepy, boys. I want to go sleep.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody that came out for the live episode. Thank you so much. If you enjoy the live episodes, leave that feedback. Let us know, because we debate. We go back and forth, good, bad, whatnot, but we enjoy being with you guys as always. You can find me on Twitter at Insipid Ghost, and you can find my content on all your podcast services and YouTube at the Xbox Expansion Pass. I just had on the developers to Redout 2, the anti-gravity racer. Prior to that was Shredder's Revenge. And looking forward to some interviews with the engineers at SteelSeries, the Sniper Elite 5 team, and one more. But I don't know if those will hit this episode. Might be a one out. So that's what I got.
I would just like to add that we go back and forth on doing this live. So I know there's a little over 40 people tonight live on this random Tuesday night. If you like it live, let us know. Like, reach out to Cast Co-op on Twitter or leave a comment afterwards, because we're trying to decide if we prefer doing this live or if you guys prefer it as a, like we used to do it, where we just upload
like this video.
Yeah, I mean, let us know, really, because we're good either way. We enjoy it. We have the same conversation no matter what. Yeah. But it is fun chatting with you guys.
Minus Joe having a moment.
What?
When Joe had a breakdown. Minus the.
I'll do it again.
But no, it's fun.
It's a Bloodborne wallpaper.
What a pony!
It's dead.
It's old Yarno when he's up there.
Dead. That game's 7 years old now, right? Yeah. No sequel.
Every time I think about like a possible announcement, I get uncontrollably excited.
7 years old, like it's frame per second.
Yeah.
7.
I can't play it. It's 30 frames.
I wish it was 30 frames. We know it's not.
It's perfect the way it is, old man.
Anyway, let us know. We do like chatting with you live. I think it's fun getting the commentary and stuff. So it is pretty cool. But anyway, for me, Porsche Power on Twitter, and everything else is at Season Gaming, as you know. So, Joe,
listen, we all know that The Last of Us Part 1 is overpriced, and we shouldn't be buying it, but we goddamn know we are.
I just like to put this comment at the end on.
Joe, it's all good. We know you love PlayStation. I do. I love it. I love Xbox, Nintendo, whenever they don't, disrespect their audience. So maybe 3 times a year, I love them. PC, I got a Steam Deck that's somewhere. It's on my bed.
And
love that thing. Avatar the game, Luke.
I bought the $100 edition of Last of Us 1. I'd just like to say.
Oh yeah. I got the purple PlayStation 5 digital plates coming. I'm very excited because purple is my favorite color.
Interesting.
That's a fact, Jack.
All right,
I'm
where can
playing
they
all
find
the
you?
old 007 games.
All right, so you can find me over at Mr. Babbitt. You can find the Trophy Room over at PS Trophy Room. You can find the Trophy Room show wherever you find your podcast service of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Google Play, wherever you find your podcast service of choice. You can find the show there or the video version at the Trophy Room show over on YouTube. Look at how fast I did that with speed and efficiency. So how do I do this? Do I just
Google
go?
Play's not a thing anymore, dummy.
Is it really?
I don't know. I just messing. I don't think it is.
It isn't.
Not on podcast.
Google kills a product every 5 minutes. You ever heard of that?
Google is awful. They're awful.
That's real.
Every time.
Keep guessing it. Keep guessing it.